Okay, so it's 3 o'clock, so I think we're going to get started. Welcome everybody to this Field Doctor webinar. I hope you've all having amidst a lovely festive break. This is our webinar all about our FODMAP elimination program. My name's Laura. You can hopefully see Alex here as well, and he'll be introducing himself shortly. But just to kick off, a little bit of housekeeping. So this webinar is going to run for about 25 to 30 minutes, but it is going to be recorded. So if for any reason you need to drop off the call, no problem. We're going to be sending a recording to everybody who has registered. Just to avoid any background noise, all of your mics are automatically muted, but you can chat to us or send your comments. There should be a chat box, I think, to your right, that you can send any comments or questions. And one of our brilliant tech teams keeping an eye on that, and we'll send over your questions to us at the end. And if we don't get a chance to answer all the questions today, we'll make sure that we sort of mop them up via email. Okay, yeah, great. I can see the chat's up and running. Okay, so for those of you that don't know me, hello, my name is Laura Tilt. I'm a registered dietitian, and I've had a specialist interest in digestive health and IBS for about 10 years. So I qualified as a dietitian in 2010, and before that I was working as a nutritionist. And I started specialising in gastroenterology after working at a big teaching hospital in London. And as part of my job there, I was asked to run a clinic on a Tuesday afternoon for people with digestive health conditions like celiac disease and IBS. And it was during this sort of part of my job that I quickly realised how many people had IBS and just how much it could affect their quality of life. But unfortunately, 10 years ago, we had very, very limited options, therapeutic options to help people with their symptoms. This was actually before the FODMAP diet, before we actually had any evidence-based strategies to help people with symptoms. So I'm glad to say that therapeutic options have improved massively during this time. I did my low FODMAP training in 2012. So yeah, about 12 years ago now. And I'm really pleased to be here today to talk about our low FODMAP program and tell you a little bit about why we developed it and how we hope it can help you. I'm now going to hand over to Alex to introduce himself and tell you a little bit more about how Field Doctor came to be, and to tell you a little bit more about our low FODMAP meals as well. Over to you, Alex.
Hi, thanks, Laura. Hi, I'm Alex, and I'm one of the co-founders here at Field Doctor. I've worked in the world of nutrition for nearly 20 years, and we started Field Doctor because we certainly believe in that diets can have a really powerful impact on our health, and not as an alternative to medicine, but something that can sit alongside things and really have a positive impact on our lifestyles. I'll ask Laura if you click on to the next slide. Before we jump into the program, I just give anyone who doesn't know about Field Doctor particularly a bit of background to us. What we do and what we try and specialize in is creating condition-targeted meals to help improve people's health. Always based on science. We work with leading experts and dietitians to really work out what we need to deliver nutritionally within the meals to help. And then our amazing team of chefs work in our kitchen down in Somerset to cook from scratch with only only the best ingredients, no artificial anything's in there, no UPFs. You might have heard that word recently bandied about. And then we flash freeze them to lock in all the goodness, pack them, and then we deliver them all around the country direct to people's doors, so that you have them really convenient way. You can pop them in the microwave or in the oven, heat them, and they're ready to go, and yeah, ready to eat. Next slide, please, Laura. I guess wanted to just touch briefly on our low FODMAP range, which forms the meal basis for the program. We're the only brand in the UK that has a certified range of low FODMAP dishes, and in Europe, I think, by Monash, who were the people that developed the low FODMAP diet. And yeah, we're really passionate about being able to deliver these meals, and we've certainly got lots of people using them. But what I'm really excited about with this program is that we can actually help people through the journey from diagnosis for IBS all the way through to working out what their triggers are at the back end once they've been through a second phase of reintroduction. But today we're really focusing on the elimination phase, and I'll hand back to Laura, and I'll pop back later.
Thank you, Alex. And I just want to say hello. Our tech team just told me that a few people joined us after the start. So welcome. You've not really missed much to you so far. Just to let you know that the session's been recorded. So if you have to drop off before the end, no problem. I'm Laura. I'm Field Doctor's registered dietitian. And hopefully you just heard Alex's intro and a bit about Field Doctor and our meals. So what I'm going to talk about today, I'm just going to give a brief introduction to irritable bowel syndrome, or IBS, as I'll refer to it from now on. I'm sure you're going to know most of what I'm going to tell you, but I just think it's helpful just for a little bit of context so you can understand where diet fits in terms of treatment. I'm going to talk about the low FODMAP diet, where it came from, what it is and how it works. I'm going to talk a bit about our FODMAP program, how that all fits together. I'm going to talk to you about what the options are for joining and then get to any questions at the end. As I said, it is going to be a whistle-stop tour because I've only got about 20 minutes today, but hopefully I can cover all the important points. Okay, so IBS, what are the facts? So IBS is what is known as a functional gut condition, and it's a condition that affects how the gut moves and functions. So this means that there's no disease in the gut. If we were to put a camera inside the gut of somebody with IBS, it would look normal. There's no structural changes. There's no abnormalities. It's just the functioning of the gut that's altered. And this results in symptoms like abdominal pain or cramping and a change in bowel habits. So a change in how often you're pooing or the appearance of your poo as well. So those are the primary symptoms. There can also be symptoms like bloating, wind, distension, which is sort of where you see a visible increase in sort of your tummy, which usually is accompanied with bloating. But those symptoms aren't necessary for a diagnosis. So depending on the criteria that is used, IBS affects sort of anywhere from sort of 5 to 20% of the population, but definitely around 1 in 5 people. And it's about twice as common in women as men. It's not completely clear why this is, but there's certainly some evidence that for a role of reproductive hormones. So we know that the sex hormones, estrogen and progesterone, there's receptors for these sex hormones throughout the gut, and they do affect gut, how the gut moves and also sensitivity in the gut as well. Now, there's no one clear cause why IBS develops. It seems to be this sort of combination of factors, which include genetic factors, major life stresses, changes in the balance of the bacteria in the gut's microbiome. So we know that some people with IBS tend to have lower levels of some beneficial bacteria. We're not quite sure whether that's cause or consequence, but that may play a role. Previous gut infections, so food poisoning, for example, repeated antibiotic use. And in recent years, there's been recognition of the role of the gut-brain axis. So this describes the two-way communication that exists between the gut and brain. So your gut and brain are connected physically by nerves, but also chemically they communicate via neurotransmitters. And in recent years, we've seen that this kind of communication becomes dysregulated in IBS, and that can affect how this can cause some of these problems with how the gut moves and functions. So there's no cure for IBS at the moment. Really, treatment aims to try and bring your symptoms to a more manageable level so they don't impact your quality of life as much. And broadly speaking, treatment options fit into kind of 3 categories. So changes to your diet and lifestyle. So we're obviously going to be focusing on diet today. Medications, which target symptoms like abdominal pain, constipation, or diarrhea. And what we call gut-directed psychotherapies. So this would be cognitive behavioral therapy. So this looks at how thoughts and feelings can actually impact gut function, because we know that this happens through the gut-brain axis, and gut-directed hypnotherapy. So I'm not going to touch on those today, but there is more information about them within our program. So in terms of changes to diet is actually the thing that most people want to try when it comes to managing their IBS symptoms, much more so than medication or talking therapies. And this is probably because up to 90% of people with IBS feel that certain foods or drinks can trigger their symptoms. Now, in the past, we have known that there are certain types of foods that can cause symptoms. Examples would be like spicy foods or fatty foods, or foods that are what we might call gas forming. So we in the past might have recommended people avoiding these, and this would have been like our primary strategy. But around 15 years ago, probably now, a group of researchers in Monash University in Melbourne, Australia, noticed that there was a group of short-chain carbohydrates that could cause symptoms called FODMAPs. And they developed something called the low-FODMAP diet. So as I said, this diet was developed by Monash University, and they first started putting together this diet in around 2005. So it was quite a long time ago now, but it takes a long time for research it's to get done and then to be tested in different groups of people under different settings, and then for that information to be disseminated worldwide and then come into clinical guidance. But essentially, they noticed that there were this group of carbohydrates that could trigger symptoms in people with IBS. And when they put people on a diet to reduce these carbohydrates, they noticed that they felt better. And that was really the beginning of the low FODMAP diet. Now, low FODMAP diet is actually one of the most effective treatments we have for IBS at the moment. And in the UK, if you have tried what we would call some of those basic diet and lifestyle changes, so looking at things like caffeine intake, spicy and fatty foods, and different types of fibres, if you've tried those things and they haven't worked in terms of improving your symptoms, then a trial of the low FODMAP diet with the support of a dietitian is recommended. So let's talk a little bit more about what FODMAPs are and what the word even stands for. I'm not sure how many people have come across the diet or have maybe tried it before. Perhaps you can let us know in the chat. But FODMAP is an acronym. It stands for fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols. So to break that down, fermentable is basically just means that these carbohydrates can be rapidly broken down or fermented by gut bacteria. So that's the process of breaking those carbohydrates down into energy, basically, which gut bacteria use. And then oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols are basically the scientific names for the different carbohydrates, and they just describe how many of those carbohydrates are grouped together. So a monosaccharide is just a single sugar or carbohydrate, and an oligosaccharide is between 3 and 10 joined together, but they're all short chains. Okay. Now, FODMAPs are found naturally in various plant foods. You can see some of them here. We've got onion and garlic, avocado, apples, mangoes, and there's nothing inherently unhealthy about them. In fact, they in some ways are good because they feed our gut bacteria, but they do have the potential to trigger symptoms in people with IBS. So let's talk a little bit more about why that is. So to understand why this is, we need to have a very quick overview of digestion, which is that foods are made up of proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. And when we eat food, it's digested throughout the stomach and then into the small intestine. And foods are broken down into a liquid and into the individual proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. And then they should be absorbed through the walls of the small intestine. But with FODMAPs, for various reasons, they aren't well digested. And this isn't something that just happens in people with IBS. None of us digest FODMAPs very well, and that's because we actually don't have the right enzymes to break them down. But they only actually cause problems in people with IBS because they tend to have a hypersensitive gut. So what happens is we eat FODMAPs as part of various foods that we consume, and instead of being absorbed through the walls of the small intestine, they pass straight through and they drag water with them, and then they land in the large intestine or colon. And your large intestine is home to trillions of gut microbes, and they actually rapidly break down these FODMAPs, use them for energy, and as a byproduct or as a result of breaking them down, various gases are produced. Now, these gases stretch the wall of the intestine, and that can lead to pain and bloating and distension, and the presence of excess water in the large intestine can lead to diarrhea. Now, depending on the type of microbes that you have and what sort of gases they produce, having excess gases produced can also lead to constipation for some people. So FODMAPs can contribute to both constipation and diarrhea. So that's essentially the science behind how the FODMAP diet works. And essentially, when you consume fewer FODMAPs, fewer of these FODMAPs end up in the large intestine and result in fewer symptoms. And a low FODMAP diet is really designed to help you identify whether your symptoms are sensitive to FODMAPs. So how does the diet work? So it's actually a 3-step process, although most people only hear about step 1 and maybe think that that's the step that you have to do forever. But a low FODMAP diet is not a long-term diet. It's actually a three-step diet. And the longest bit is personalization, which happens right at the end. So a low FODMAP diet starts off with what we call elimination, and that's the program that we've designed and that I'll be talking about in a moment. And so low FODMAP elimination lasts for 2 to 6 weeks. And during this time, you're basically going to be swapping out all the high FODMAP foods in your diet for low FODMAP alternatives. And an example would be wheat. So wheat is a high FODMAP food, and we eat quite a lot of it in the UK because most of our starchy foods that we consume regularly are made from wheat. So bread, pasta, noodles, most biscuits and cakes are all made from wheat here as well. So it'd be swapping those out for low FODMAP alternatives. So instead of pasta, having rice or potato, for example. And you would do this, we would help you to sort of look at your diet and make the swaps that you needed. So you do that for 2 to 6 weeks and monitor your symptoms. If your symptoms improve during that time, it would suggest that you are sensitive to FODMAPs, and then you'd move on to stage 2, which is FODMAP reintroduction. This is a really essential stage, and basically it's going to help you identify which FODMAPs you're sensitive to. So if you remember that slide previously, I explained that there's different groups of FODMAPs that are different kind of chain lengths, if you like. And what we know from the research is that it's unlikely that you're going to be sensitive to all of them. So what we need to do is identify which ones you're sensitive to. And FODMAP reintroduction is a really sort of methodical process of one by one reintroducing the foods and working out which ones trigger your symptoms. So this bit can take around 8 to 12 weeks, depending on how many FODMAPs you reintroduce and depending on how you respond as well. And then in the last step, step 3, that's FODMAP personalization. In this stage, you'll go back to as normal a diet as possible. So you'll return all the foods to your diet that didn't trigger your symptoms, and you'll only continue to limit those that did cause a response in FODMAP reintroduction stage. And that's it really. So from beginning to end, the whole process can take around 4 months. So it is quite a commitment, but the research shows that actually up to 75% of people with IBS will get relief from their symptoms on a low FODMAP diet. That's kind of the short-term studies. And when we look at longer-term studies where people have sort of gone on to personalization, sort of studies that have lasted looking at people following personalization anywhere from sort of 6 to 18 months, a good 60% of people still maintain good symptom control. So it, even when you've come off elimination and you've moved through to personalization, and we've got good evidence that it sort of helps you to maintain that symptom control. On the less positive side, we know that a low FODMAP diet can be really tricky to follow. It can feel really confusing. It can be tricky to cook and make meals whilst you're following a low FODMAP diet. And it should be done with the help of a dietitian. So we know that people tend to get better results when they follow it, when they're supported by a dietitian. And this really leads me to our program and why we developed it. So we really have tried to design here a program that will make following the low FODMAP diet easier, and try to fill in those tricky bits that people have trouble with. So it's written by myself. So I'm a FODMAP trained dietitian. I trained with King's College in 2012 and Monash, I think, in 2020. And our program is delivered over 2 to 6 weeks online. So as you'll remember, the elimination phase lasts anywhere from 2 weeks to a maximum of 6. So depending on how long you follow the program for, that's kind of our elimination stage. So during the program, we'll teach you how to swap out those high FODMAP foods for low FODMAP alternatives. And if you are someone who thinks you might like extra support with your meals during the program, you can include either 1 or 2 of our Monash certified low FODMAP meals a day to your program. And if you did that, that would mean you'd only need to plan your breakfast and any snacks you might want. So just to give you a little bit more detail, so if you decided to join the program or you were interested in joining, you'd go to our sign up page. And first of all, we do a little bit of what we call like a suitability check, because we want to make sure that it's right for you. So we'd take you through a few questions to make sure that you'd had a medical diagnosis of IBS and just to check about any existing restrictions on your diet. If we do think you're a great fit for the program, we'll ask you about your symptoms, and then you'll get the option to order your field or add your field doctor meals to your program if you want to. Once you've signed up, you'll log into the program via the website, the Field Doctor website, and that's where you'll access your program and all the resources. So the program's set out in weekly chunks. We start off with what we call our introductory week. And this is where we'll explain how the FODMAP diet works, how you can identify high FODMAP foods in your diet and swap them out for low FODMAP alternatives. We've got a meal planner and recipes to help you as well. And once you're ready and you've read through that information, you'll then start FODMAP elimination. And that every 2 weeks, we'll ask you to check in with your symptoms. So at the end of the first 2 weeks, you'll do a symptom assessment check, and we've got a nice little tool. It's just 5 questions, but it's a more objective measurement to help you identify whether your symptoms have improved or not. If they have and you want to continue, you can continue for up to 6 weeks based on your progress. And at the end of the 6 weeks, we'll help you move on to FODMAP reintroductions. We're actually building that bit of our program at the moment, but until it's ready, we're going to tell you how you can move on to reintroductions. If the FODMAP diet doesn't work for you, so after 2 weeks, I do realise it can feel disappointing, but it will be positive in that you'll know that FODMAPs aren't a trigger for your symptoms. And if that does happen, we'll also, we've got a guide as to what alternative therapies you might want to explore if that is the case. Okay, I'm now going to hand over to Alex just to talk about joining options before we pick up on any questions. So over to Alex.
Brilliant, thanks, Laura. I think Laura mentioned this earlier, but we ran a pilot over in December to look at different options for people to join and run the program, and we've actually built out from the pilot scheme that we trialed. So there are 3 options for people to join. First one is to just use the program, and that means that you can get in. You effectively buy a membership, which would be £50, which gives you access to all of the resources, the symptom checker, the journal, all the information, and all of the resources created by Laura and the team. The second option is program plus 1 meal a day, so it gives you the option to produce and follow some of the recipes that we have, or if you know some of your own low FODMAP recipes, use that for 1 meal a day. And then the third alternative is one where we deliver you 2 meals a day, so 14 for the week, and you would have breakfast. You would sort breakfast yourselves, and then you'd have lunch and dinner. There are some options that you can add into the program if you want. We have some low FODMAP porridges that we have, and we also have some low FODMAP cakes. And in the new year, we're going to be adding some snack bars as well. So there are some additional options to add into the program if you want to do that. But you have those 3 options if you want to do it all on your own with just the program, or 1 meal a day, or 2 meals a day. Back to you, Laura.
Okay, great. I think just before we go to questions, so if there are any questions, please start popping them now, because I think we've got a slight delay from YouTube to coming into our feed. I just wanted to mention a little bit about the suitability or the fit check that I mentioned. So we really want to make sure that you have the right support, I guess, and that the program is right for you. So we do take you through a number of questions before you sign up, just to make sure that it is right. So just want to give you a bit of heads up as to what they are. So we do ask that you've had a medical diagnosis of IBS. That could have come from your GP or a gastroenterologist. This is because IBS shares the same symptoms as lots of other conditions. So we want to make sure that you have got IBS and there isn't any other cause for your symptoms. We recommend that you don't join this program if you've got any history of an eating disorder. This is because the low FODMAP diet is a restrictive diet, and that could be triggering. And there certainly are other options that we would recommend if this was the case for you. And when you go through, if you do answer yes to any of these questions, we'll kind of explain what they are in more detail. As I mentioned, although the FODMAP elimination phase can be as short as 2 weeks, you need to be prepared, I guess, to change your diet for up to 4 months to take you through the whole sort of 3-step process. So that's quite a big commitment. So it's just good to be aware of that. The next one is about having no major restrictions on your current diet. So when you follow a low FODMAP diet, it is a restricted diet. So if you had additional restrictions on your diet, perhaps for medical reasons, it might mean that it would be really, really difficult for you to get enough of the right nutrients to stay healthy. So that's certainly one where I would recommend having some extra dietitian support before making that decision. There's also alternative therapies or kind of slightly different ways we could look at doing the FODMAP diet if that was the case. And the last one is just no sudden changes in your symptoms. So if your symptoms have been, when I say stable, I understand that they do flare, but there's no kind of new symptoms for you or nothing kind of strange about your symptoms. If there has been, we'd just ask you to go and check in with your GP before you join the programme. Okay, so I think that's everything that I wanted to mention about the programme. So if we could perhaps go to questions now, if anyone's got any. Yeah, and then we can see where we are.
I know we've had a couple of questions sent in already for some people previously, but I think one of the ones that's come through on the chat, I think that we can see is about, do we have options for vegan and vegetarians? I think that's quite a common question.
Do you want to talk about the meals, Alex, what we have?
Yeah, so within our low FODMAP range, we do have some vegan and some vegetarian meals, but we don't have a vast array. So it's something that probably is possible to use and is possible to use within the diet, but the portfolio of products we have isn't vast, so it does become slightly more challenging. It's definitely possible on the one meal a day to use the meals, but there would be a level of repetition in that respect.
Yeah. So speaking from the sort of actual FODMAP diet. So a low FODMAP diet is more difficult or more challenging if you're vegetarian, and I would say most challenging if you're vegan, and that's because a lot so FODMAPs being carbohydrates are found in plant foods, and a lot of foods that you might rely on in a vegan diet, particularly for proteins such as beans and pulses, nuts, are high in FODMAP. So if you take those out as well, you're going to be looking at a really, really limited diet. With vegetarian, if you're vegetarian, it's a little bit easier because you can still consume low FODMAP dairy products, and you'll be eating eggs as well. So in terms of vegan protein options, which are low FODMAP, you've got things like tofu and tempeh, and we do talk about sort of including low FODMAP serving of beans and pulses. So sometimes you can have sort of 1 to 2 tablespoons a meal. But what I would probably do if you were vegan in this case is think about doing what we would call a FODMAP light version, which is sort of not following the whole diet, but actually just maybe doing like a bottom-up approach. So just eliminating the 5 sort of main foods which are highest in FODMAPs. That would really require you working with a dietitian sort of one-to-one, but that would probably be a much easier way of doing it if you were already following a vegan diet. So yeah, hopefully that helps.
Thanks. Cool. I had a question about costs. So the way that obviously if someone is buying the meals as well, the way that we've set the program up is that if you're choosing the option with 2 meals a day, then our meals singles cost anything from £6.99 up to £7.39, and you'll get 20% off the price of all the meals, and then the program itself would be free. If you went for 1 meal a day, then you would still get 20% off your meals, and we would deliver you 2 weeks worth of meals, but you'd have 1 meal a day, and then the program itself would be £25. But if you just wanted to choose the program on its own, then the program is £50 and you have access to that forever, effectively. So you can use that as and when. So in effect, if you're just buying the program, it's 50. If you're just going for 1 meal a day, we discount it 50%. And then if you're having 2 meals a day, it's the program itself is completely free.
Yeah, I think someone from my team has helpfully put here for us that it works out to £78 if you'd had your 2 meals a day, because that includes your discount and your free program. So that would be the minimum amount of time that you could follow the program for. So that would give you your 2 weeks. Most people, to be totally honest, want to continue for another 2 weeks. So like a month normally is like an average amount of time. But yeah, the minimum would be 2. So that would cost you 78. And then obviously you would decide whether you wanted to continue or not. Okay, hopefully that helps.
I have another question here, which says, I have a diagnosis of IBS as well as recently IBD. Is low FODMAP still suitable in this case alongside conventional treatment?
Yes. So what I would say is that the advice is to, if your IBD is controlled, so you're in maintenance, you're not having a flare, and you still have functional symptoms, so you can have IBS on top of IBD, then yes, you can use a low FODMAP diet during that time to sort of help manage the IBS symptoms. So as long as the IBD is well controlled and is maintained, then that would be absolutely fine. Yes, and it has been, we do have some clinical research on that, and it can be really effective. So yeah, I would probably recommend doing that with the support of, I'm assuming or hoping you might have a dietitian on board that's supporting you with the IBD. So yeah, do it with their sort of guidance, but you could certainly use our program and education to help you follow it.
Brilliant. We had a couple of questions just around where do we deliver in, and we deliver anywhere in the UK, and we basically do next day delivery. We had a couple of people asking about, do we deliver into Northern Ireland? At the moment, we don't. We'd love to, and we have done in the past. We're finding it very hard to find a partner who can ensure that we can get the meals to you safely and still, because they come frozen, delivered next day. So at the moment we don't, but it's something that we'd love to be able to do, because and certainly potentially the rest of Ireland as well. But at the moment, unfortunately, only UK, mainland Britain. I had another question about, is the program still a good option if I've tried Elimination before?
Yes, it could be. I guess my question would be, how did it go with Elimination before, and how long have you been off it? So if you know that the FODMAP diet absolutely works for you, but you came off it because you weren't sure how to do reintroduction, for example, you would still need to go back onto FODMAP Elimination probably for 2 weeks before you then started reintroduction. So you could use it in that way. Or if you've tried FODMAP Elimination before, but perhaps you tried it by yourself, and you weren't really sure, you felt like it was confusing, or you weren't really sure what you were doing, and you feel like you didn't really maybe do it properly, that would be a great option as well. If you tried Elimination before and you tried it, for example, with a dietitian and with, when I say good resources, I mean maybe resources from like Monash University or King's College, and you were guided through it and it didn't help you, it's not going to be a good option, because I can't see that it would add anything for you this time. I hope that makes sense.
Cool. We had one other question, Laura, around other diets, and someone asked, does the diet suit people who have pancreatitis? So probably a little bit more specialist, but I'll throw that one to you.
Yeah. So I'm assuming, because I think this is a question that was sent in. So I'm assuming this person might mean that they had an acute episode or short-lived episode of pancreatitis. So if that has resolved and they're now well, yes, they could definitely follow a low FODMAP diet if they had medically diagnosed IBS. So what I should have said first is that the only condition that this is approved for is IBS. So although, as I mentioned earlier, somebody asked if you could use it if she has IBS and IBD. So sometimes you can have two conditions which coexist, and need to take into account what maybe additional restrictions that person might be following. But we know that it can work well in that case. And in terms of pancreatitis, if you've got chronic pancreatitis, but it's medically managed, and you've got IBS as well, then I can't see why you couldn't follow that. But again, it's probably one that I would work with your dietitian to do. But yeah, hopefully that answers that question.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
We had a couple of other questions which were more around field doctor itself and around could we deliver to schools and or offices, and that's something we would happily talk about, but maybe that's something that I can pick up after this.
Yeah.
And go from there.
No, I don't think we just need to say about signing up, really. I don't know if Ben, who's our fantastic tech person who's helping us do all the tech behind the scenes, can put up the last slide for me. But basically, all that there is to say is that you'll be able to sign up from, it's the 30th tomorrow, isn't it? I've sort of completely in that sort of, is it the Twixmas they call it? Between Christmas and New Year, you don't really know what day of the week it is. But it's the 29th today. So you'll be able to sign up from tomorrow. So you could go through that fit check or the eligibility check to check it's right for you. You could create your program, and if you wanted to order your meals, you'd be able to order them from tomorrow, and then they'd be basically delivered to you for your start next week. So we will be sending around our link, so you get VIP access because you've come here to this webinar. So we'll be sending that through tomorrow with a link for joining up, which will have sort of the discount that Alex mentioned if you're going to go for the meal option. And there'll also be contact details on there as well. So if you've got any other questions, if there's something that's come up for you after today, you'll be able to reach out to us as well. But thanks for joining us today. I hope it's given you an insight into the program, and yeah, we're really looking forward to launching this, and hopefully we'll see some of you on the program.
Brilliant. Thanks all.
Thank you.